Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Um, Thanks for registering for Ever Funny from TikTok to Stand Up with Sherry Mckay. And it is brought to you in partnership with Creative Manitoba and the Winnipeg Comedy Fest. I'm Arlie Ashcroft. I am the Indigenous Programs Manager at Creative Manitoba. And before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge and pay respect to the ancestral lands of our ancestors, the Anishinaabe, the Cree, the Oji-Cree, the Dakota, and the Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation, and express our gratitude to Shoal Lake 40 First Nation for our water because water is life. Tonight we have our amazing guest, Sherry Mckay, and the host with the most, Dean Jenkinson, who is the artistic director of the Winnipeg Comedy Fest. So without further ado, I give you Dean and Sherry.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Arlie, for partnering with Winnipeg Comedy Fest. Always a treat and a pleasure to put these on. We do a handful of them every year, 3 to 4, and we have a couple more coming up in the new year. One is going to be on taxes. Another one is going to be on finding your authentic voice on stage and in your comedy. But tonight we're talking with Sherry Mckay, who is a stand-up and a content creator and an influencer and a motivational speaker and many, many other things. But she has over 600,000 followers and over 27 million likes on TikTok, and she's going to tell us a little bit how she managed to do that. Thank you very much for joining us, Sherry Mckay.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a nice, I guess, stop of the fast pace of things. My schedule's been kind of crazy, so I appreciate being invited to come and share some stuff with you guys. I'll start with a little bit about myself. I'm an Anishinaabe from Treaty One territory, and I started my journey on TikTok in late 2019, 2020, kind of at the beginning of the pandemic. Um, and I had nothing to do, much like a lot of us, right? So I had these really funny videos that I wanted to create. I never envisioned myself being in front of the camera, let alone on stage. I was a person who liked to write things for other people. And at least that was my vision, was to have, people say these things for me. And, when you're by yourself, especially during the pandemic, and you want to share some things with people, you don't have a cast and a crew. You don't have lighting and sound and all of those cool things that kind of make production value a little bit, extra special, I guess. So I had to do it all myself. And, I would kind of create videos that would be a little bit more lighthearted in terms of the pandemic that we were all experiencing, because because it was tough. It was really, really tough for a lot of us. And even being an introvert myself, I would find myself in these weird thought processes of like washing my hands, and how many times am I washing my hands during a day? And I thought it would be funny to share those things, and touching the door handle, touching the knobs, and almost becoming obsessed with it. And then masks like everywhere. So I focused a little bit on that, as well as like Indigenous comedy. Some things that I thought were really, really neat and interesting to be able to share with fellow Indigenous viewers and content creators. Things that are kind of specific to who I am as like an Indigenous woman and mom, and things I've experienced, and to be able to convey them to the screen was really neat. And then I just started gaining followers, and I didn't really know what that meant. And then I needed space on my phone one day, so I deleted the app, and I came back about a month and a bit later, and I had like 200 followers. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not even doing anything on this app, and I'm getting followers. So I started creating more, and kind of just all over the place. I wouldn't really say that I had like a category or a niche. It was just, I wanted to talk about funny stuff. I wanted to be funny. And then I got thrown into advocacy for myself, because when I started creating Indigenous comedy, my videos were ending up in places that people didn't know that Indigenous people, that we're not all riding horses with long braids and with fringes and all of this stuff, right? So I had to advocate for myself as an Indigenous woman and talk about who I am and I guess how I'm Indigenous and which is like fair enough, you know, especially if you live in a place that doesn't have a lot of a large Indigenous community. And I'm very fortunate to be living in Winnipeg because we do have a large Indigenous and Métis community. So my videos ended up in weird places where people would say mean things to me, and I had to grow a tough skin quite fast. And it helped. It definitely helps, especially you know going into the comedy scene and being on stage. And if you bomb, you know you're kind of already like have built up that I don't know rejection. So social media definitely helped me a lot. And somewhere along the way, I got invited by Debbie Christian from the Indigigirl comedy program. And she asked me if I wanted to join and learn stand up. And I always had a real like place, like a big place in my heart that I've always wanted to try stand up. And I've always like enjoyed watching stand up comedy and, you know, would frequent the comedy clubs around here to see people come in and do their show and really appreciated the vibes. So, of course, I said yes. And it was through Zoom. And it was kind of difficult because, you know, you're now having to I guess, navigate this digital space, not only with what I was doing on TikTok, but meeting and learning and just listening to someone talk, much like you guys are just listening to me talk right now, right? So it was kind of difficult for me. I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I learn by doing and seeing. So it was really interesting, but so much support. We had some local comedians here, like Issa Kixon, and like it was really great. And I didn't know until the very end that our finale was going to be with the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, and that we were going to be performing at the I think it was a gas station theater, and then they also had like their online thing. So it was a lot of people for our first time. And I'm speaking for myself, no open mics, you know, no performing in front of people. And then just coming out of the pandemic, it was quite scary, but I got that bug, you know, that everyone I got bugs. I got the comedy bug that I really I just couldn't shake. And I was like, that was so fun. I want to do it again. The camaraderie with the other women in the scene, it was just like it was just something that I really enjoyed, and I'll always remember. Shortly after that, I did my very first like I guess like online comedy show, and that was nothing in comparison to like having a live audience. And so I did a show and there was about 70 people watching me, and I was in my office by myself trying to tell my jokes. And I looked and everyone had their cameras off and their mics off. So every time I told a joke, I was like, I don't even know if I'm funny. Like I was like ready to give up because I was like, this is awful. And I had that fear of performing in front of a live audience and kind of being rejected in that sense as well. But like Zoom was terrible. And kind of just built from there. But one of the biggest things, and I know it's on the list of some of the stuff that I want to talk about, was the imposter syndrome. And for myself as a comedian coming from the digital space into like live performance on stage, that was like a really scary transition. Not only because of like me performing in front of people, but also like the community. And so for myself, I had a difficult time. There's a lot of etiquette and there's a lot of things that if you're not familiar with the space and the people and kind of how the whole machine of stand-up comedy works, you can step on toes. You can do all kinds of things that, you know, just like I guess in a lot of other industries that if you're not familiar with people and spaces and kind of just the different types of characters that are in those spaces, you can do things that you know might not be so good for you in your comedy career. And so I feel like me coming from this digital space and already having quite a large following, that when I went to do a show, we would sell tickets. Um, and it was like, I didn't bust my butt 10 years in doing open mics. I didn't, I wasn't in the comedy scene just yet, and I was already selling out shows. And so I definitely had this imposter syndrome of like, why would people want to come and see me? Why would, like, what's so special about me when I've never done this type of stuff before? And so my journey with that is I just had to deal with it. And I just had to kind of put my big girl pants on and realize this is an industry that I want to be in, and that I kind of just have to learn to navigate through a lot of trial and error. So that being said, when it comes with like the imposter syndrome, is I look at it like, if some people who take some really great photos or make some really beautiful paintings might not have went to art school, or they might not have taken photography, but they can work this craft in such a way that is so amazing. So it a lot of it comes from in here, and it's a lot of like dedication, and then everything kind of follows with all of that. And you have to kind of put in a lot of, not kind of, you have to put in a lot of work. So I kind of just went from like, yeah, I kind of do stand up, or yeah, I'm a comic sometimes, like, to like, no, this is what I do, and this is what I do for a living. And then along comes all of the other things with that, like knowing your worth, and also being aware of, standard rates of what people get paid. Because I could do a show for 2 grand somewhere, and then I could go and do a show someplace else and get $50 in a drink ticket. So it's very different. So you kind of have to just work with what's out there, but at the same time know your worth. Excuse me. I see camera and phone techniques. Um, I'll be totally honest with everyone. I am not like this technological genius that knows how to like work all of this fancy equipment, or like even just in the digital space of knowing things like your algorithms and your your search engine optimizers and things like that. I know a little bit, but in terms of like your lighting, think about the things that capture your attention when you're creating videos, whether it's your highlight reel, or you're creating TikToks, or your headshots, or whatever it is you're doing on your own. Think of your lighting. Think of the different like, I remember my first headshot I was so filtered out because it was taken with Snapchat. And I was like, oh my gosh, this doesn't even look like me. Like, so be mindful of those types of things when you're using technology, and you don't want it to be so grainy, but good lighting really helps if you're watching a video and something captures, your attention, because it's nice and clear. You're also speaking very clear. And yeah, the lighting and the sound, I feel like, is very important when you're creating videos specifically on TikTok, and also like attention span.
I have a
Oh,
question.
yeah.
So now are you shooting things on your phone still? And if you do you have an external mic that you attach to it? Or are you still using like the mic that's just built into your phone, or what is the actual gear?
So yeah, I just use my phone. I don't use an external mic. I have a DSLR. I have all the gears and gadgets, and the gimbal to keep it like the steady cam. I have all that stuff. Because I thought that that would really amp up my production value. And a lot of it is like, you can make it look pretty, but if the content itself isn't that great, people aren't going to watch it. So I've spent so much time on one particular video, and it like totally flopped. Like no one watched it, right? So you have to find a balance with those things. A good lighting and a decent phone with some decent storage is pretty good. I've gone through like lots of phones though in that aspect. Sometimes my sound will stop working. Um, I've had to take it to get looked at a few times, and Apple was like, "Why is your sound always going?" And I'm like, "It's because I'm making so many TikToks." But yeah, your sound, it's a big deal because like you want people to listen to you and you want them to be able to hear you clearly. But to answer your question, I don't use all of the gadgets. I've tried it, and to be honest with you, a lot of it is it's kind of just, I know, someone could have a podcast and they could have the whole studio and everything and then just talk about complete garbage that no one wants to listen to. So try and find your balance with the content and then your technology. So I hope that answers the question. But also, like, if that's your vibe and like you like doing all that and you really like script things out, like your precision is just awesome. I work in chaos. I work well in chaos, I'm going to say. So um, for me to kind of have to, have all of this equipment and have a script and stuff is just, it's not the best way that I work, but I think it's good for people to kind of experiment and see what works well for you when it comes to like content creation for sure. I would also say that like when it comes to content creation, a lot of us think that people know this already, or they don't want to watch this, or they don't want to hear that. You'd be surprised at some of the stuff that people will watch and listen. I'm surprised when I create a video and I think it's absolute garbage and I post it anyways and it ends up going like crazy viral and memed and like it's shared in discords and all over the place that I'm not even aware of. So give yourself a chance, and a lot of times when we post things, like if it's not doing as well as you hoped it would or you wanted to fix it, you can always delete it and repost. Like a lot of times we think that sure, there is a level of truth to once we post something, it does stay out there and it is out there forever, but it doesn't have to sit on your platform forever. I would say I still use hashtags. Like when I post things, I still am a part of certain hashtags that I follow. Like I would follow Winnipeg comedy or Saskatchewan comedy or stand-up comedian. So try and make it specific to whatever you're posting. So if something's trending right now and it's like, funny cats 2024 and it's really viral, but you're sharing comedy, you don't want to use the hashtag, funny cats 2024. So you kind of want to drive people to your content and to your page. There's been a lot of different strategies that people have been using. There's a comedian that I follow here. His handle is Jeff Gobil on TikTok, and he does a really neat thing where he talks about the three jokes that didn't make it kind of thing. Like he's not quite there with that joke. And so I think there's like 10 videos he's done. And he pitches these three jokes, and some of them I'm like, that's hilarious. Like, what do you mean you're ditching that joke? But then you read the comments and people will like even make suggestions, or they'll even like offer up like a punch up, or, so like sharing things, it's helpful, but at the same time, I don't particularly share all of my comedy stuff on social media. I'll share bits and pieces because I don't want to burn my set, because I want people to buy tickets and come see me, right? I want people to come to the show and listen to it in person. But I think it's fine, like just a couple of little clips here and there. I've been compared to like, I'm in no way, shape, or form like a TikTok stand-up comedian, because I don't share a lot of my stand-up on TikTok, and I've created that platform for myself prior to my stand-up. So you end up getting followers for certain reasons. And so when I talk about TikTok, and I actually teach TikTok, sometimes we feel compelled to just, maybe we're sharing recipes, right? Maybe we're a cooking channel and we share all of these recipes, but one day our dog is just acting insane and he's hilarious. So we record him and we post it to our cooking channel, and it goes viral and you get like millions of views. Now everyone that follows you is going to think that you're this funny dog channel. So you still have to kind of be specific with some of the things that you post, or I guess just be mindful of the people that follow you. And I've done that where I've posted a video that was kind of out of my range, out of my scope of my usual content, and got tons of followers. And then when I went to my regularly scheduled program, I lost a bunch of followers because they were like, hey, where's that content you were creating before that I followed you for? So being mindful with that. But then also, like, maybe you're like, maybe I don't want to cook anymore. Maybe I just want to make this about my dog or about my comedy. You know, there's lots of ways to kind of switch up your platform. Timing and length content. I find now a lot of people have a shorter attention span, and myself included. So I think if you can't grasp your viewer within the first 5 seconds, chances are they're probably not going to watch any longer and they're going to swipe up past you. But if you find a way to kind of engage with your audience, whether it's a tag, if you have something that you kind of continue to do throughout your videos that people will know you for, or even if it's like a background or something that you're like, you know, a lot of people would be like, hey, stop scrolling, listen to this. It's kind of cheesy, but at the same time, you know, now you have like an extra 2 seconds to really reel them in so that they'll watch the rest of your video. So unless it's really compelling, like a really amazing story time or something really, it's hard to say because I think all of my videos are amazing and I know many of them have flopped. So we could think that it's so amazing and so fun and like awesome that it's going to go viral, and you know, it might not. But again, you can always repost across other platforms. So not just talking about TikTok, but your Instagram and your Facebook, because those are also different audiences, right? So not everyone who's on TikTok is going to be on Instagram and vice versa. So doing a lot of cross posting and being able to share things will kind of help you build a following as well. But I would say keep it, like, if you can keep it short. There's something my daughter was teasing me about, and she said, Mom, you have that millennial pause. And I was like, what the heck is that? And she was watching my videos and she said, you pause before you start. And I'm like, well, what? Like, so it's not fast enough for some people that I'm like, you know, like creating these videos where I'm talking and I'm like, I'm pausing because, like, I don't know, it's not like I'm meaning to. So there's a lot of different things, much like I said, like during or in the comedy scene, there's different etiquette that is also on TikTok. And yeah, I don't think being called a millennial is as much of an insult as some people think it is. I'm like, I'm a cusper. I was born in the early 80s, so I'm like on that cusp. But yeah, definitely shorter videos tend to do well. And there's a lot of what do you call that? When people watch a video and they send it, people will watch a 7-second video more likely than they'll watch a 7-minute video. And you can upload 10-minute videos on TikTok now, which is wild. Excuse me.
So when you're saying like keep it shorter, what's sort of for you that have you found is like the optimum or optimal length?
I almost feel like under 3 minutes, if I can get a video under a minute, I'll post it. Because people like time really is money, and people are cheap with their money and they're also really cheap with their time. So if you can get someone to watch you, and you can also go into your analytics too, like if you can learn how to, like, a lot of it, there's creator tools, and every social media platform has analytics. So if you have a post, you can go look at your analytics for that particular post and see your watch time. So if I have a 50-second video and people are only watching the first 7 seconds, then I kind of need to I need to take note of that. Like, what was it and where was it in that video that they were like, nope, and then scrolled past me, right? And it's fine if people just aren't interested, but there's literally something for everyone on social media. I watch a guy open up his residuals, for like old stuff he did like when he was just in his early 20s, and I'm like, oh my god, he only made like $1.17 for that. I watched like some of the silliest things, rug cleaning, like, yeah, you name it. So there's definitely spaces for everyone in terms of all of your content. So if you don't want to share your stand up, or like in particular, you can also work on like building that following and building that fan base. So when you're having shows or when you're doing things, people will be like, I seen her on TikTok, or I seen her on Instagram. I really like that. There's some comedians. I think their name is Darcy and Jer, and they are amazing. Like, they're on this like their second deadly tour, and they started on TikTok. So they managed to really create this really great space and do that transition into the stand-up scene and performing. So they're very inspiring, and I really dig what they're doing. Last year, I was doing a tour, and my comedy sister, Stephanie Pangua, she's from Ontario, and she was in the comedy scene a little bit longer than I've been. I wouldn't say like years, but definitely had, even that little bit, whether it was a year, it was still a year's more experience than what I had. So she was able to kind of show me a lot of the ins and outs. I didn't even know what a green room was or what riders were, or I was just like along for the ride. So you kind of just get to learn all of those things as you go along. And then also when it comes to your content creation, you'll find out what works and what doesn't. But I wouldn't, if you're doing something that you really enjoy, like maybe it is cooking and you have funny commentary, maybe it's makeup and you have like, again, funny commentary, or you're just doing something that kind of accentuates your personality and who you are, people will dig it. That they'll dig it. And when I talk about followers, I had someone say like, oh my gosh, I only have 40 followers. And I'm like, could you imagine, like 40 is not a small number. Could you imagine eating 40 slices of pizza? Could you imagine having 40 kids? It's a lot, it's a big number. So like, don't sell yourself short if you're not getting the views or the follows like right away. And if you get a viral video, like ride that wave, like pump out more stuff like that. And there's a content creator by the name of Selena Spooky Boo, and we're friends. And when I seen her, she was posting these sleepwalking videos, and she would do some crazy stuff in her sleepwalking videos, like end up outside with no clothes on or farting or like whatever it was. She had gained over 25 million followers from those sleepwalking videos. So if you think that people aren't interested in watching whatever it is you kind of want to share, think again, because there's an audience out there for everything. There was a lady that did like a 50-part series, and it was, I think it was Who the Fuck Did I Marry? And so people watched all 50 parts, and it was wild. Like everyone was talking about it. So just find your way into this content creation. And what I do personally is if I'm feeling compelled to create something, whether it's a talking to camera thing or showing something else that I think is fun or funny, if I'm not 100% sure about it, I will put it in my drafts and think about it, because when we put stuff out there, we have to be mindful as well. Like, is this going to harm someone? How is this going to come back to me? Because there's like the stand-up comedy where I feel like sometimes anything goes. And then there's like that digital space where like you can get canceled for just about anything. So when using that digital space, yeah, be mindful of the people that are going to watch you, and I guess how things can be twisted and not in your favor. So that social consciousness, we all have like a digital footprint. And I'll speak to some of the things that I've done. I had a really neat brand deal with a company called Google, and they wanted me to launch on Twitter. I don't do Twitter. Twitter is mean. People on Twitter are so mean. So I don't really do Twitter. I had my old Twitter account, and it was for a phone, an Android, and I'm an iPhone user. So they were like, yeah, we would like you to, talk about the partnership launch on Twitter. I went onto Twitter. I had like 350 posts. And I was like, for someone who hasn't been on Twitter in years, why do I have so many posts? What is going on? I had linked my Twitter to my YouTube. So anytime I liked something or commented or shared, it was posted to my Twitter feed. And so there I was like, commenting on James Charles's new makeup look, or like, stuff that was like, why is this being posted? Why did I do that to myself? So I had to go back and delete all those videos or all of those posts. And as I was going through them, I was like, could there potentially be anything like extremely problematic that I liked or that I commented on? Luckily, no, there wasn't. So I would also say, go through your socials and kind of just, we don't want to like be fake about who we are, but we also, sometimes there's things that you posted last year or maybe even last month where you still don't think like that anymore, or you've maybe had a different point of view, perspective, you had a change of heart or whatever. So go through your socials and kind of ask yourself, am I still the same person? Do I still have these same point of views? And so not necessarily like hiding who you are as a person, even if you're a little rugged, because I'm a little rugged and I still get rugged on Facebook. But at the same time, you kind of don't want any old stuff to come back and bite you in the butt. So as I was going through my Twitter feed, I seen at the very bottom, when I first started Twitter, I thought I was inboxing my son, but I was actually creating a tweet, and I was tweeting him. And it was stuff like, make sure you pick up your brother after daycare, or can you please take the clothes out of the washer because they're going to stink, like stuff like that I was posting on my Twitter. And I was like, oh my God, I just don't know how to do social media. Like, I don't know how I got this far. But there's things like that yeah, you don't really, you might not take into consideration. Maybe it is an old Twitter account. Maybe it is being a troll in someone's comment section on on YouTube or whatever. And if not, great, that's fine. Then you have a fresh start on all of these new platforms that you get to share cool stuff on. But yeah, your digital footprint it's pretty important because it can kind of make or break you. And I feel like it's just during those times right now where it's like everyone's watching you very closely. Everyone's waiting for you to mess up and say something wrong. And then you could also be on the other end of that too, which I'm, where you're like, that's offensive. And I don't know, it's just, it's a weird space to navigate. So be mindful and kind of just be conscious of stuff that you share out there. Making a tight 5 highlight reel. I would say that like when you're performing stand-up comedy, myself, I've had people come to the show and like record with the phone, and I've had like a whole camera guy with audio bring in, some stuff to help record. The way that I've done like highlight reels for myself, and I've never posted them on my socials, but have used it to kind of send to places that we were going to book, or people who were interested in bringing us in, and just sharing some things with them, like this is kind of how rugged I get, or this is the things that I joke about. That it doesn't have to be your whole 5. It doesn't have to be your whole set. In my experience, I feel like a couple things here and there, along with stuff like your following, or places that you've performed at, or who you've performed with, it's just I feel like it's just as good, especially if you don't want to bring your whole set on social media. You could have like a Vimeo link, or, send those things that way. And Canva is what I use. I don't know if you guys use Canva, or if anyone here is familiar with Canva. There's tons of templates. It's pretty user friendly. There's a lot of um, how-to videos on social media. If you're creating a reel, and you kind of just pop in your videos and sync them up. So
So are you using Canva to make your videos and then posting those on TikTok?
not
Or-
necessarily on TikTok, not every TikTok. I have with some, especially ones that I wanted like neat, like graphics on the front, or things that were kind of just a little bit like added. For the most part, I will use my phone directly in the TikTok application and record from there. So if there's a trend or an audio that I want to take part in, I will save that audio, and then I'll go back and I'll use it, record the video. And then you can also use CapCut in the application, in the TikTok app, to be able to edit your videos. And again, it's very user friendly. If anyone here is familiar with like iMovie back in the day, it's kind of like that, where you kind of just pop it in and you can shorten it and duplicate it. Or yeah, CapCut's pretty easy to use. Like I said, Canva, we create our posters on Canva, and we'll do like promo videos. And I wanted to share a couple of promo videos that me and my comedy sister made. So it's fun when you find like a trend that is happening, and you can find a way to either promote yourself, or even just participate in the trend that's viral. Whether it's, I don't know, dancing, or I don't know, using the trends get so intricate now. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm looking at sometimes. I'm like, well, what does this mean? And then I have to kind of read comments to figure things out. But I did want to show like 2 videos that me and my comedy sister did. We did a workshop in Toronto for Indigenous youth. And so we had these youth come in, and we taught them how to create like their sets. And then we booked a really neat venue in Toronto called the Drake. And then they got to perform there. And we had 7 participants. So we were really pushing this show, because it's we're used to like promoting ourselves, but then promoting for other people. And it's like, come on, I promise it's going to be a good show. And still not really knowing, like, is it going to be a good show? Like, so I did want to show, they're very short videos, but I'll just show you how we used a little bit of a TikTok trend. Oh, wait. I also need glasses. Share. There we go. Oh, what happened? My
nothing.
apologies. Nothing happened.
Nothing.
I got these long nails, and I tell you, they just don't do nothing for me. All right. So
did you get your tickets to the Drake's Underground Comedy Show, Toronto Indigenous Showcase, 7 p.m.?
So stupid. Oh, that was not the one.
Playing a game of whack fuck here. Whack.
Oh, did you get your tickets for the Indigenous Comedy Showcase in Toronto, Ontario on November 16th on Saturday at the Drake Hotel, featuring all these amazing Indigenous comedians at 1150 Queen Street West? No? What are you waiting for? Did you get your tickets to the Drake's Underground Comedy Show, Toronto Indigenous Showcase, 7 p.m.?
What? So that was just like some trends that were happening that we managed to like, and I used CapCut where we kind of just put the two videos together, that donkey coming over and then my legs coming over. And then Stephanie rolling out of the ambulance, and then Stephanie rolling. And so lots of people seen that video and they were like, I had to come and check out the show because of that stupid video. Yeah. So can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So there's lots of different ways that you can create content. And whether it's stitching someone else's video, because there's a stitching option where you see a video and you're like, I really like that, or I have an opinion about that, or I want to share something. There's a stitch option where it will play that other person's video, and then you can come in and you can create, your video. A lot of times there's like closed captioning for people who need to see words on screen. There's lots of different really neat options, especially in the editing tools when it comes to just adding a little bit of oomph and zhuzhing up your videos. Like I said, I've put a lot of time and effort into some videos, like almost an entire day, and it totally flopped and like nobody cared to see it. And I was like heartbroken. And then I post a stupid video that I'm like, no one's gonna care for this. And yeah, it gets like 100 million views. So you never know what kind of gold you're holding onto when you're creating content. And just like the different types of content out there. I don't know if anyone here has any questions specifically about content creation, or that transition that I did from content creation to stage.
I'm wondering, what was one of your first videos that hit?
Mm.
And did it surprise you?
Yeah, it surprised me every single time one person would watch any one of my videos. So I was actually trying to get my daughter to help me create a TikTok account. And it took me like a month and a half to finally get her to help me with it. And what I wanted to do is, because I was watching people who were doing trends, but I wanted to indigenize it. So I wanted to create the same trend, but maybe we're talking about beaded earrings. Maybe we're talking about these things that are kind of pop culture-y in the Indigenous community, things that I wanted to add and switch it up a little bit. So she finally showed me how to make my own audio. And it was this trend where everyone was using this audio from Lizzo. And it was like, I just took a DNA test. Turns out I'm 100%. And then it would be like Italian. And then that person who was Italian would be like, that's a spicy meatball. And they would be all Italian, right? Or Ukrainian. And people were showing their pride in who they are. And I was like, well, I wanted to switch it up and I wanted to make it Indigenous. So I took a song called If I Wanted You Girl by Ernest Munoz. And I put that in there and I said Indigenous. And then I was like beating. And then I was like locking my door with a butter knife. And then I did like the moonwalk in my mucklucks, things like that I thought were like funny, not very specific to being Indigenous, but kind of like, funny, silly. And that video, that was my first like really viral video that I got a lot of attention. And then that's one of the videos where when I'm talking about being Indigenous, people were like, you're not Indigenous, you don't look Native. And I never really questioned I never questioned people's indigeneity living in Manitoba because we have such a large Métis population. So I just never was presumptuous about those types of things. But on social media, I guess, so, at some point I was like showing my treaty card really trying to show people like I'm native. And that's where I kind of got thrown into having to advocate for myself because my video blew up. And that's what happens. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you do really well, is that people will have all kinds of opinions and say all kinds of things about you. And so you have to kind of remember that it's easier for people to like bully and say some ugly things online to a complete stranger than it is, you know, in person for the most part. I don't know. I've been heckled before, so I feel like that's another story. Any other questions?
What would you say the amount of, like, you said you don't post a ton of stuff that you put in your stage show,
Mm-hmm.
but how much of your stuff do you try out that then you work on it and then you take it on onto stage?
Well, here's the thing is like one of my very first shows I did, there were people in the crowd that create merchandise. And so they were creating merchandise from my jokes. And so I was like, oh, dang, that kind of sucks. Like, it's funny and it's fun, but when you are creating a joke, whether it's based on your experience or whatever it is, and you're performing in it, and it gets that big laugh that you just love, and then someone kind of like steals it and puts it out there in like another way, like making bumper stickers or t-shirts. I was like, dang. And that wasn't even me posting to social media. So then that became a fear of mine, like people stealing my jokes or stealing, you know, certain things, which is why a lot of a lot of comedians that I watch, that they're not like, not the big guys that people would be like, hey, that's an Eddie Murphy joke, or hey, that's a, and we already know. But like, you know, someone who would come to a show and kind of take your joke and or watch it online and take it and perform it somewhere else. You know, unless someone tells you, you're never going to know. And then if it's their first time hearing that joke and then they hear your joke and then they're like, oh, didn't you steal that from so and so? And it's, you know, so it was a fear of mine. And I'm not saying that my jokes are just so awesome that people are going to steal them. It was a legitimate fear. So posting them on social media, what I noticed about the big like stand-up comics that do post their stuff, it's crowd work. It's a lot of that crowd work, that interaction, and it's funny and it's a one-off that people can't steal that really, you know, like other comedians wouldn't be able to like steal that joke because it was a one-off interaction with the crowd. But I also found that when comedians were really posting and getting famous for that crowd work, everyone out there thought that that's what stand-up comedy was. So now you're up there and you're performing and you have people who have never seen a show before and they think that they can have that engagement that they seen on TikTok. And it's like, oh my gosh, you know, so it's, I feel like social media has kind of changed some of those things for performers as well, like in terms of like people being chatty in the crowd because they seen it on TikTok, you know. So I think that was just a fear of mine. So the stuff that I do have posted on my socials is crowd work. Like there's my joke in there, and then there's that little extra bit of crowd work. And I know that a lot of us have like jokes that are based off of our experience. So it's kind of hard to steal that joke anyways, but there's other bits and pieces that people can take. And the thing that I learned too, when I had this big fear that people are going to steal my jokes, that there's that parallelism in comedy as well, as just because someone has a joke that's kind of similar or very on the same, in the same category, doesn't necessarily mean that they stole it. It just means that they had that same kind of experience as you, and that's okay. And that's what we hope for when we're telling jokes, is that the people that are laughing can relate to it because they experienced it as well. It's just you're performing it, right?
Now, you mentioned earlier about when you were starting to do stand up, that there was a bunch of sort of etiquette things that you weren't sure about that you learned about, like you learned about what the green room was. What are some of the other sort of etiquette lessons you learned moving on to a stage?
Be mindful of your time, like for myself, like if I said I was doing 7 minutes or if I said I was doing 10, I would practice and practice and practice to make sure that I was really doing that 10 and I wasn't doing 12. I wasn't cutting into someone else's time. So just things like that. Like uh, I was doing a show in Saskatchewan and we were in the back and we were talking about the different types of jokes, the things that we were going to joke about. And one of the comedians was like, okay, these are the things that, and he was opening. So he said, these are the things that I'm going to joke about. How do you feel about that? And I was like, oh, I have a joke about land acknowledgements. And he was like, so do you want me to scrap it? And I was like, no, I think it would be. So there's some comedians that would be like, no, I don't want you to talk about it because I'm going to. And I learned that. I didn't know that. I'd be like, I think it'd be like a neat segue into my set. Like, I don't know. So just learning that people and their crafts, like other comedians and their crafts, that we're all different and we kind of, the machine's very different for us and we're thinking and kind of how we set up our jokes and how we work. I've come across people that will have a bunch of shots right before they go on stage, or some people that want to be in the quiet and want to concentrate. And so kind of just learning like, oh, okay, there's Mary, like let's leave her alone because she's about to go on. And kind of it's just learning about the different people, the lingo, and I'm still learning like so much. I compare doing stand-up comedy to like medicine. In the Indigenous community, we talk about how medicine is like healing and laughter is healing. But like, you have doctors. If you had a doctor, I'm like, if you had a doctor working on you, he's only a doctor for, a year, you'd kind of anticipate that, or you'd hope that they're going to do their job. And it's kind of the same thing. Like if you have someone who's just really learning the ropes, like you still want to give them a little bit of grace. So I'm still very much learning. Did I just compare myself to a doctor?
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Ear, nose, throat, I don't know. Pick one.
Foot doctor, I don't know.
I just wanted to ask about your actual TikTok. I was checking it out. So do you post every day or twice a day, or do you load up your drafts or whatever? And like how do you pace it, I guess is my question.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because a lot of times like people think that, there are some content creators that are on a very like tight schedule. They'll post once a day. They'll post their getting ready with me or like all kinds of stuff, right? So I don't post every day, and it's not because I don't want to. I've had like such a hectic schedule where I'll record something and I will too be like, I don't know if people want to see this, and then it's like, I have to listen to my own advice in that sense too, because I'm like, someone's going to want to see it. So I end up putting it in my drafts, and a lot of times I'll forget about it. And then a week goes by, and what I've done before is I'm like, oh, I'm going to post that TikTok from Toronto. And I post it, and then I get all these messages like, oh my God, you're in Toronto. And I'm like, no, that was last week. I should have posted it last week. So there's different ways you could do it too, like batch posting, like where you could take a whole day of creating different types of videos, put them in your drafts. So maybe you have videos for the next 5 days, and then you can just post them every day. Like if you're on some type of schedule. And a lot of times for myself, because I'm more out in the public, that when I create videos, I don't include a lot of people in my videos. And I've learned my lesson, where I used to include a few friends, and then sometimes you have a falling out and they're like, delete that video. So I was like, oh, that was such a good video. But now I have to delete it because, you know, that person no longer wants to be in that video. So I've kind of just, it's a weird space to kind of navigate. And I didn't really have anyone to help mentor me to figure out all these things. So I would say if you could post one video, see how that does. You know, you get some engaging comments, and then if people, depending on the video, if you're telling a story and then people are like, oh my god, part two, then you could post a part two or a follow-up to that, and it kind of makes it a little bit easier for you to actually want to post that second video, because you're like, now people are looking forward to something else, and then you can continue that. But I myself, I used to post 2-3 times a day. I used to go live on TikTok all the time. And now I'm like, you know, I'm I'll be in like a live, and then my sons will come in the room and be like, Dakota clogged the toilet. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, you know, there's just things that I'm like, I've kind of withdrawn from, that I feel like I need to get back into. So I should probably start posting every day or every other day. Hey.
There's a
I find-
question.
I find I do it for about 3 weeks and then I lose interest for like, I'm like, okay, that was good for 3 weeks, but
Yeah. Totally. And it's okay to like switch things up.
yeah.
It's okay, yeah, it's okay to switch things up. There's a few content creators that I follow, and I just follow them through they're just showing me their everyday stuff. You know, like, oh, I'm making this for dinner, or you know, it's Thanksgiving, let's go shopping. And then it's just things like that, where I find an interest in all different kinds of things. And I know not everyone's the same, but yeah, post the type of things that you enjoy watching too. And sometimes if you switch up the things that you know you enjoy watching, switch up your content too.
There's a question in the
Yeah.
chat. How hard was it to get into stand-up? Did your presence on TikTok open the doors for your stand-up, or did you have to crawl your way up to be on stage? Also, you have beautiful cheekbones.
Oh, thank you. um the stand up, how, like, when I got into stand up, I would say it was fairly, I would say that it was quite easy, in the sense that there was that Indigirl program that helped me kind of learn the ins and outs from, you know, local comedians here that had a lot to share from their experience. Which, you know, sometimes if you're scared to get into like a profession or an industry, we don't all get that. I didn't get that when I got into TikTok. I didn't have anyone to mentor me. So when I seen that there was this program available, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to be a part of that. And it was a huge surprise, like at the end, that we were performing in front of this huge audience. And I feel like that in itself and my following definitely helped me get to where I am. So if you can either create a presence by, because I also know people that have a large following from doing stuff on TikTok that are trying to segue and transition into stand-up comedy. And it's not as easy as people think, because of the stuff that they've used to help build their platform. And it wasn't necessarily comedy, or maybe it was memes, or maybe it was just being a jerk on the internet. You know, so you could be a jerk on the internet, and you can try and be a jerk on the stage. Maybe it'll work, I don't know. But I've known for about 3 people that have kind of been struggling with that transition, because it is very different. When you're, especially like, in the sense, for myself, being in my office and like in front of my phone and making these funny videos, and then I can't do that. There's no editing, there's no cuts, there's no, you know, scripts or any of these, no wigs. I mean, there could be wigs, but there's nothing that you can really do on stage unless there was like some type of segue. So I focused on comedy. I went a little off and I did some ranting and raving, but then I came back to comedy. So when people come to the show, they know, hey, she kind of makes some funny videos on TikTok. So they would come for that reason. So it definitely helped me. But I also feel like in that sense that when I came into the comedy scene, I was treated a little bit differently because I was like this TikTok comedian that didn't earn my keep kind of thing, right? And it was like, who the hell is this girl? Like, I've never seen her before. Oh, she's on TikTok. Oh, okay. And that was the vibe that I got because I didn't put in the work that so many other comedians did, performing in open mics and just like getting to know your other comedians and stuff. So I'm still doing all of that. I'm still kind of learning.
And another question, did you get a chance to have a creative outlet and get paid before your TikTok?
No. No, actually. So I have a diploma in policing, and I was actually like this close to becoming a Winnipeg police officer way back in the day. And then I was sitting in my office job. I was working for a nonprofit, and I came across these really like fun creatives that took the creative communications program at Red River. And I was sitting there in my button up in my slacks, and they were all having fun. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. Like, I wonder what they're doing. And so when I seen the program, I decided to apply for it. And it was like one of the hardest things I've ever done. And I failed my first semester, but I got to learn like just like the hard work behind things like journalism and media production, because as I'd mentioned earlier, my interest was in media production, writing, maybe directing and producing, and not necessarily being in front of the screen. But yeah, kind of just pushed myself to do the things that I've always wanted to do, even if I was the one that had to do it. So yeah, I wasn't always going to be on social. I never thought that I would be on social media or doing stand-up comedy.
Another question.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about the money.
Yeah.
Do you make money with social media, or is it more for advertising other gigs, or just purely as a creative outlet?
So going back to like the creative outlet is like when I found TikTok and I was like able to kind of share all of these fun things. And I would literally like wear wigs and different costumes and play 2 or 3 different characters having dialogue. And so that was my creative outlet and being able to express things. And then, so at the beginning, no, I didn't make any money. TikTok doesn't pay me any money for likes, shares, or views. There is a thing called the Creator Fund in the United States where you can get paid. I know a few content creators that actually have like a VPN to the US, and they're Canadian content creators, and they're a part of the Creator Fund. So I'm like, if you know how to do that, it's possible. But I was always too scared to even like attempt it. So I think maybe that has also stunted my motivation into content creation, because it's like I'm not getting paid for this, and I'm putting in a lot of work and a lot of like creativity. And but once you gain like a certain following and a certain number of followers, places will reach out to you. So I've done a bunch of brand deals. So although I've never been paid through TikTok, unless it was on live, because when you're live, you can get paid through gifts and then you can cash them out into your PayPal. So the very first live that I actually did, I probably had about 20,000 followers, and I did a live, and for some reason I had like thousands of people watching me. And I was like, I was wearing wigs. I was wearing wigs, and I was doing like silly stuff. And then when I was done, I had like $500 in gifts, and I didn't even know. So I was like, oh my God, I want to go live like all the time. But then the next time I went live, I had like 12 people watching me. So it was very different, where I was like, okay, it's not the same. So you kind of, I also know people that are like live all day long and they do battles and things like that. There also was those like fake like AI people that were on live all the time and they were doing things for gifts. Like they were like pretending they were like AI and doing all these weird things for gifts. Is quite entertaining, but I don't see that anymore. Um, there's also a creator marketplace, but so basically what it is it hooks you up with a brand that might want to work with a creator, and you can apply to work with them to do like a brand deal. And I went on to the creator marketplace, and the first brand deal that was offered to me was they sent me a message and they were like, we feel like you would be that your audience is the perfect demographic for our product and we would love to work with you. And I went and I looked at their product and it was a thing called the shotgunner. So you like punch it in your beer to shotgun it. And I was like, I feel like this is racist. Like, what do you mean my audience is the perfect demographic, especially when I'm just creating indigenous content? So I'm not too sure about the creator marketplace. It's kind of just the wild, wild west out there. Anyone can, pitch creators to do or to create promotions for their products. So I would be careful with that. But yeah, I've done some really neat brand deals, and these brands reached out to me because of my TikTok. So even though I didn't get paid from TikTok, I was known on TikTok as an influencer and content creator. So they wanted to partner with me to sell their stuff. So
Cool. Is it good stuff?
um, yeah, like I did the partnership with Google, and like I got a phone and like all the Google gadgets, like the Google Home and the Chromecast, and they paid me 16 grand.
What?
Um, yeah, I was just like, what? But it was like for 6 months, and because I'm an iPhone user, I was like, it was so hard for me and content creator for me to switch from iPhone to the Android to the Google Pixel. And so when I made that announcement on Twitter about my partnership with them, I posted it from my iPhone. So it was so it said at the bottom of my tweet, posted from iPhone. I used to mess up my brand deals like all the time. I did one with Adidas and I took a picture and the picture was like cropped where my shoes were cropped out. So you couldn't even see the shoes. And yeah, I just messed up lots. So lots of learning. But also lots of cool opportunities out there. I have had a lot of First Nations communities reach out to me to travel and go and do comedy in these First Nations communities, which is the bulk of what I do now. When I'm not working like with TikTok or doing other types of really neat things like this, that I'm traveling to different communities.
That's awesome. Somebody's written a question, Crystal. What is your idea/writing process? Do you get your ideas from your kids and things you see in everyday life, or do you think more like a writer and brainstorm your ideas?
Oh, I wish I could brainstorm my ideas. We've tried this so many times, me and my comedy sister, and we just go off the rails into all these different directions, but none of us are, I guess we don't write the stuff down. So a lot of it comes from experience and like my kids and my family or observational things that I'm constantly making notes. And sometimes I'll go look at my notes and I'll be like, what the heck was that? What was I talking about? Um, Also just things and topics that like I want to touch on and I want to talk about. And then I think of like a funny story or experience that's connected to that. So for instance, one of the things that I'm working on right now is I'm working on a joke about I did my ancestry DNA and I found out that I have 3% Neanderthal DNA. And apparently that's a lot, like more than your average. So my joke is I'm trying to spin it because there is a large pretendian situation happening in the Indigenous community. So I'm working on this still, where I'm trying to kind of parallel it and compare it to my 3% Neanderthal DNA to someone who might find that 3% Indigenous DNA. So I'm constantly like working on my jokes, but also finding a place to put them, right? So like if we're talking about reconciliation, or we're talking about land acknowledgements and all of those things, or just being a mom or being a woman in her 40s, you know, there's lots of content there. So no, I don't brainstorm, and I'm not very organized.
I'm wondering, so Dean has had the exact opposite experience where you've come from the stage. I'm curious, Dean, do you do TikToks? Is that your jam? Any socials?
No, I've never ventured into TikToks. My journey took me from stand-up into festival producing, and so I try to stay in my lane as much as I can, because if I get in other people's lanes, I upset them.
Oh, well, that's really neat, like going from like on stage to behind the scenes, because you've already had that experience, and you kind of get the big machine that it is, and then the different roles that people play. So that's really neat. Yeah, I dig that. Um, what other creative outlets do I have? Um, I can't see the rest. Was there more to that question?
I think it
What?
says, what other creative outlets do you hope to accomplish in the future?
So one of my coming back to media production, one of my biggest goals was to have either a sitcom or a feature film. And so I've been working on a sitcom for the past, I'm going to say almost as long as I've been doing TikTok. And it's gone through all kinds of motions of the hurry up and wait for, broadcasters and funders and all of this stuff. But I'm working on my own TV show right now, and we got the green light for development from Crave. So next month, I'm hoping, we just finished up our pilot. We have our whole season Bible and our pitch deck ready, and they really love it. And so we just finished our pilot and our first episode. So we're hoping to hear back hopefully by the end of January to see if we'll go into production.
Nice. What's the title right now?
The title is called I Can't Save You.
That's the title, or you can't tell me the title?
I can't tell you. No, it's right now it's called I Can't Save You, and it's about a mom who's basically kind of doing everything that she can to save everyone, and in turn everything falls apart, and then just trying to rebuild everything again. And ultimately it was like that, that thing that you strive for, whether it's like buying a house in a really nice, safe community, or getting that, nice vehicle, or going on vacation, whatever it is that you kind of strive for, that once you get it, you're like, now what? Or like, it's not as great as you thought it was going to be. And now there's a whole set of problems. So, yeah.
Another follow-up question is, do you wish you got on TikTok or started doing stand-up in your 20s to have a creative career, or was it better to start later in your life?
I feel like I'm right now I've thought about that. I've thought about like, what would I be like if I was like younger? I'd probably be super reckless. I feel like I have, knowledge and experience to be able to not be as foolish as I feel like I would be in my 20s. Like everything, like interacting with other people, or kind of, maybe what if I was younger? Maybe I'd have like this huge ego, or I don't know. I don't think I would be as successful and one of the things was because I wasn't as confident in myself back then as I am now. And it's one of those things where it's like, I wish I was as young as I was back then as I am now, but I also didn't know all the cool stuff that I know now to kind of help me stay on like a really good path. And yeah, be humble and learn and be more open to criticism and, you know, other people who are just trying to help. I feel like when you're a lot younger, you know, maybe you're just, I don't know. I know a lot of really intelligent, like humble, amazing young people too. So I'm just thinking of myself in particular. I was pretty rugged, and I don't think I probably would have been canceled way before I got to any type of fame.
And what is your advice for writers? Crystal says, I like more of writing movie scripts, plays, or things for Netflix, that kind of writing.
So my daughter also really loves to write, and she's very specific about the types of things that she likes to write too. So I would suggest the best thing anyone can do, I feel, is go outside of your comfort zone and try different things too. So if you like the whole Netflix television thing, try like a screenplay or something in theater, or, you know, like switch it up and kind of, I tell my daughter she has a very specific genre of books that she likes to read. So every once in a while, I'll grab her something a little different, to kind of switch it up for her. And, or she'll take one of my books and be like, what the heck is this? And then read it. And so I feel like when you try new things, that's when the growth happens. I never really used to care for like podcasts, and I guess it's depends on the podcast, but I like hearing people talking. I like audiobooks when I'm driving, and I never really used to care for stuff like that until I tried it. So and always write. Like I'm always writing, whether it's in my notes, whether it's on, we've brought like napkins. You know, we're at a restaurant and we're writing on napkins, and then we were like, okay, oh yeah, this is when we were talking about XYZ things, excuse me. And so just, I guess, write lots, write all the time, write all different types of things. Even kids shows sometimes. I don't know if anyone's ever sat and watched like a kids show. Like sometimes it can be a little bit obnoxious, but like when you look at like storylines and story arcs and the characters, it kind of, sometimes you can relate to them, or sometimes it can bring a memory or something that can help your creative process when doing other things too. So just explore and experiment with your writing. I hated writing, to be honest. If it wasn't like this or like this, I was like, I don't have time for it. And that's why we would have napkins or random pieces of paper, a million notebooks with like one page used, you know, like just everything. I now force myself to write no matter what. Any other questions?
Mm. Oh boy.
Sure. Wait, I didn't see it all. How do you keep a positive outlook while pursuing a creative career? It's hard to get paid for creativity. It is so hard to get paid for creativity. Like there were times when I didn't know my worth. I don't know the standard rate. So like, you know, I would get hired to go into a community and they'd pay me like $1,500. And I'm like, shoot, that's like so good. And then, you know, I get booked to do different shows somewhere and that someone else produced, and they're like, what's your rate? And I'm like, $1,500. And then they're like, how about an Uber and $50 and a drink ticket? You know, like, so it's so, it is extremely hard, but like we promote ourselves, like shameless promotion you know, always putting it out there, always being taking part in like other people's stuff, and being a part of community is really important too. And I know, like any other industry, that like there's some people that maybe they clash, or maybe they don't like work well together. And I think it's good to know those things as well too, because then you're kind of, you don't want to get caught in the middle, or you can kind of you know, just be aware of like the history between places and people or venues and stuff, and kind of just be mindful of that, and just promote yourself, create your highlight reels, create content. I always feel like people are sick of seeing like my posters or seeing my face, but if people are sick of seeing you, they'll mute you or unfollow you, and then the people that actually want to see you will come and buy tickets and come and see your show. It is hard to stay positive, but I also feel like there's just so much negativity that can feed more negativity. So when I'm feeling down, I'm like, I suck. You know, we're not selling tickets, and it's hard to bounce back from that. But it's okay to feel your feels. Just like, don't stay in those dark places, because it's hard. There's a huge energy exchange when you're doing stand up and you're creating videos, and you're trying to make people happy and laugh and feel good about themselves. And then, yeah, and then you're sitting down and eating ramen for a week because you're like, this is hard. But I would just say, find something that helps you kind of stay on that positive path, because yeah, it can you can spiral, and you can kind of withdraw from the things that actually make you happy. So just surround yourself with good people and good vibes. And I'm constantly watching TV shows, um, ones that I dig, and movies that I dig, or calling people that, you know, that I love and that make me feel happy. So it's a journey for sure, trying to stay happy when you're poor and you're broke.
Do you make a concentrated effort to like schedule time just for yourself, just to, you know, chill out, get regrounded?
Usually when I myself do that, or me and my comedy sister do that, it's because we have a block of time that we try and schedule, you know, for instance, like during the holiday season. Like last year, I worked right up till the 24th, and then even after Christmas. And I was like, this is like, you know, I barely even got to put the tree up. I didn't, Christmas Eve, I was wrapping everything. I was up till like 6 a.m. So it's hard to kind of just be in the motions of work and promoting and everything else. So when you finally do get to sit down, make it last and make it worth it. And me and my comedy sister, like I mentioned, or I'm not sure if I mentioned to you guys, but we're sober. So we've quit. It's been about 5 months, because in the industry, it can be so easy to like celebrate. You're constantly celebrating, like, yeah, that was a good show. Let's go get shit faced. Or, and then, you know, and then now that downtime that you could have used to write or get a massage or get your nails done or just chill with your family, now we're hungover and we're feeling gross. And so prioritizing things definitely, but I wouldn't say like every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, I get a massage, or I don't do stuff like that. It's kind of when I have time, or when I can schedule myself time. Yes. Yeah. I didn't know anything about that. I just thought everyone was my friend. Like, so I wanted to see the second part of that. Fame leeches, people who see you on TikTok and are fake. Yes. Um, I like to think the best of everyone, and that, you know, people have like good intentions, and there's usually something that kind of gives it away. There's usually some type of red flag that kind of lets me know, okay, this person just like has no interest in me as like a human being, but what I can do for them. And so I just don't do anything for anyone. Like if someone is like, hey, you should hook me up with this, or like, I don't do anything for anyone. So usually those people weed themselves out. And it's happened where I've had like a friendship for almost a year. And when it finally was like, okay, I'm not going to be a part of these things in like your projects, and I'm not asking you to be a part of the things in my projects, that it was like, okay, well, they didn't want that friendship anymore. And I knew it was because there was no like collaborations. And sometimes, like I said, people just give away those things themselves, but it hurts because it's like, you feel like people are just kind because they're kind or nice, but they want something from you. So it sucks when that does happen. And how do you find the good people to be surrounded by them? I feel like there's a lot of really good people. I think to myself, I was like, I don't think I'm that bad of a person. There's got to be some like decent people out there in the world and in the comedy scene. And you kind of just realize when you find your people, you find your people. You can find the same things similar. There's a lot of people that I've met in the comedy scene and friends that I've had for years, that when I started being noticed or performing, that they were weird towards me. And it was like, you really changed, man. And it was like, well, I thought we were supposed to change. Like, I thought we are supposed to grow and like, do cool stuff and do cool things together. But people are so used to looking at me maybe like 5 years ago that they can't fathom who I am now. So those are not my people. The people that you kind of grow with. And my comedy sister, for instance, Stephanie, we've went through a lot of things. We did our tour last year, and when we first started out the tour, there was 3 of us, and we were warned about like comedy groups and kind of how having the different types of personalities, and how sometimes when you're in such a close proximity to one another, that problems can happen, and sometimes personalities clash and stuff. So there was 3 and now there's only the 2 of us. And so we went through a lot of stuff last year, and kind of just trying to be professional about things and trying not to have hurt feelings. And so it's definitely a journey when you're trying to find your people, but when you find them, keep them close and treat them good. Mm-hmm.
That seems like excellent parting words.
Yeah.
Just in time for the holidays.
Yeah. Those are some really great questions. Like, thank you so much for those. Mm-hmm.
Crystal's got a good iPad.
Yeah.
Well, this has been excellent. Where, 2 things. One, do you have any sort of last minute parting advice? And where can people catch you live in the next little while?
I don't actually have any shows in Winnipeg. I did see that there was like a contest happening, an Indigenous comedy contest, I think somewhere. So I do want to hit up some open mics eventually and kind of just like bum around the city and meet some people, like, because I haven't had the opportunity to really do that. And I am an introvert, like I am super shy. And so if I don't really know someone, it takes a lot in me to like push myself on people or be like, hi, I'm Sherry. And just so if you guys ever see me out and about, please come and say hi, like or even just on social media, come and say hello. And what was the other question? Any parting words or advice?
Yes. Yeah.
I would just say that just have a lot of fun. you know, when we take things super serious and we take the fun out of it, then it makes it hard for us to come back to those things. So just have some fun, network, try and meet some really cool people, put yourself out there, and see what happens, and reach out to people too, you know, other people that you might not be like, you know, super familiar with, but maybe you admire or that you kind of really dig them. Reach out to people because you never know where it will lead to.
How about you, Dean? Any follow-up?
I feel like as the oldest person on the organizing team, I came to learn about TikTok because I haven't ventured on it. So my parting words are just to say thanks so much for being part of it, Sherry, and telling us about your journey and what you've learned, and really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. Now go make
Thank you
some
so much.
content. Yeah. Now go make some content on TikTok and I'll follow you.
Thank you so much. It has been an absolute delight and a pleasure.
Take care,
Have a-
everyone.
Have a great night, everyone.